when you think about the beauty industry and you shrug it off and you say, oh, well, that's all surface level, or oh, that's about vanity, or oh, that can't have real impact. This woman took hair and empowered female African-American entrepreneurs. This is what they were. They were entrepreneurs. They had their own businesses to have access to economic resources that they never would have had access to before. This is Off the Shelf, where we take the most iconic beauty brands, products, and people in the beauty industry off the shelf and examine the stories behind the story. It's where beauty is treated like the economic, cultural, and power-building force it really is. I'm Susannah Dellinger, and here we're going to talk about what really shapes the industry, who holds the power, how decisions get made, and what it actually takes to build, scale, and quite frankly, survive in beauty. These are the conversations happening behind closed doors about money, relationships, risk, and cult moments. If you're building, breaking through, or trying to understand how beauty really works, or just love a really good story, you're in the right place. Welcome back to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Susannah Dellinger. Previously, we had talked about why beauty and the economic impact and societal impact that the beauty industry can have. And you might have found yourself saying, okay, that's nice, and moving on. But I want to introduce you to somebody that perfectly exemplifies what it can mean to change the world through beauty. And I am going to introduce you through her story because she has passed away because she was born in 1867. I am talking about the first ever self-made millionaire in the beauty industry, Madam C.J. Walker. If you are not familiar with Madam C.J. Walker's story, you're in for a treat today. She created an entire ecosystem for women that built wealth, community, and true power during the Jim Crow era. Madam C.J. Walker was born in 1867. By the age of 7, she had been orphaned. By age 20, she had been widowed and was a single mother. She remarried Mr. Chris Walker and launched her own company in 1906. What type of company could a orphaned, widowed, single mother, remarried possibly launch in 1906? Well, she launched a haircare brand called the Walker System. The Walker System took scalp care to an entirely different level. She had an entire system where she treated what is now known as psoriasis and dandruff and irritated scalps and hair growth with not just the regular lotions and creams, but an entire system that included hot combing, massage, application. And she built this company from complete scratch. So she meets her soon-to-be husband in about 1906, and then she has this idea. And he says to her, instead of being known as Mrs. C.J. Walker, what about Madam C.J. Walker? Because Madame is what everybody thought of as the most elite hairdressers from France. And it also opened up this idea that you could be of any background and still access this incredibly glamorous idea of what your hair could look like. And she trained thousands of women across the country. Not only did she build her own manufacturing facility in Indianapolis from scratch with an entire African-American crew, she also opened 200 schools across the United States with the sole intent to educate African-American women on how to apply the products and the entire Walker system. She had one of the first ever business models where she then gave these women complete control of where they went to go sell it, how they sold it, and high commissions. Think, let's see, what are some of these? Avon, right? Think Mary Kay. Think any of those, Avon lady calling, but in the 1900s as an African-American female, having never seen a system like this anywhere. This was born in her brain. She went on not only to train all of these women, but then she actually turned her own home into a complete gathering center during the Harlem Renaissance. So she goes and she builds this beautiful brand. She has all these women across selling. What do you do next? You become a model for philanthropy. She partnered with the NCAA and gave a large portion of her amazing estate every single year, she donated to anti-lynching efforts. And I want to just stop and think about that. The fact that that was even an organization that one would need to help fund. This is during, again, the Jim Crow era. This is before Martin Luther King. I'm recording this on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, MLK. This is before any idea of desegregation would even begin to happen. She was able to donate to anti-lynching funds to help bring a platform to this. And then she built her first ever home outside of New York City with one of the first ever renowned African-American architects. And she opened up her living room to have all of these amazing activists come and gather. And it was funded entirely by beauty, entirely by the idea of we want great hair, that we want scalps that feel wonderful, and that we want to present ourselves in a certain way. So again, I ask you, when you think about the beauty industry and you shrug it off and you say, oh, well, that's all surface level, or oh, that's about vanity, or oh, that can't have real impact. This woman took hair and empowered female African-American entrepreneurs. This is what they were. They were entrepreneurs. They had their own businesses to have access to economic resources that they never would have had access to before. African-American women in 1900s were not going to walk into a bank and get a home loan. They're not going to walk into a university and get the types of degrees needed to have professional jobs. The way to create true wealth in any family is education. It's resources. And that's what this Haircare did, is it created a level playing field where it then went on for 4 generations. Madam C.J. Walker unfortunately died of hypertension in her 50s. Some say she worked too hard, perhaps. She passed it on to her daughter, who also unfortunately died of hypertension, also in her late 40s. She also had a daughter who passed it on to her 3rd generation, and so on and so on. Unfortunately, in the 1980s, during a time of economic downturn, the company did fall apart and did go out of business. But you're talking about a company that was formed in 1910. You're talking about over 70 years of societal and economic growth, all from the audacity that this woman had to think, I have an idea. And quite frankly, she had a dream that lasted for more than 70 years. Not only did it create her as the first ever self-made millionaire through the beauty industry, it also created more self-made millionaires. And this is something that you cannot take away from the beauty industry. This idea that everything the beauty industry creates pretty much didn't exist before. The best things out there were completely made up in the minds of women of, wouldn't it be great if this could happen? Wouldn't it be great if not only I could create an amazing product, but I could help other women and their families? Wouldn't it be great if we had access to capital and resources? And wouldn't it be great if this world changed? And can I do that through my dream? And there is nothing more honorable than that. I can't wait to introduce you to more amazing women through the beauty industry, through a series we're going to do called Beauty History 101. But I could not possibly sit here on MLK Day and not start with Madam C.J. Walker. Rest in peace. To give you a little bit of a sneak peek of some other amazing, amazing beauty players that we're going to take off the shelf and look at the stories behind the story in this series. We have Estee Lauder. Spoiler alert, she was not born Estee Lauder. Elizabeth Arden, Beyond the Red Door. Max Factor. Yes, there's guys in beauty industry too who played a huge role. Janine LaBelle, one of my favorite beauty rebels that changed the industry forever. And of course, Bobbi Brown. We have so many more to dive into, but I'd also would love to hear from you. Please leave your comments in the comment section about what people in the beauty industry are you curious to take off the shelf and explore their story behind the story. These conversations matter because who gets to speak shapes who gets to win. If this episode challenged how you see beauty, business, or the power behind the industry, share it with someone who needs to hear it. To connect or explore more, check the show notes. I'm Susannah Dellinger, and this has been Off the Shelf.